thank you so much for coming.
Oh, it's
Happy
a pleasure.
International Women's Day.
Yeah,
or
likewise.
International Women's Week, as the Queensland Government like to call it this week. We just got in on a Thursday.
Just made it for this week.
So thank you so much for coming. Dren, basically did the intro, so I'm gonna skip over that and jump straight in. So we're gonna go through a little bit about your background. So before iVvy, before Australia, tell me a little bit about kind of where you grew up and how that was like.
Thanks, Ariana. It's a pleasure to be here, and happy International Women's Day. And I celebrate International Women's Day in so many different ways because it's just wonderful to share journeys and also encourage amazing women out there reaching for their dreams, but not just women, because International Women's Day, in order to make change and equality, comes from the support of men and all of our partners and brothers and fathers to really shift things forward. So I like to celebrate everybody's participation in it. So my background as an entrepreneur, I was a born entrepreneur. I started probably really thinking about businesses from the age of 9. And I tell a little story because my dad, I was living in Chicago at the time at the age of 9, and having immigrated from South Africa. As you can hear, I have an accent. If it's still here, it's South African. I was born in South Africa, but I grew up in the States, and my dad ran a very large medical company, and which was about to be listed on the NASDAQ. And the one day I said to him, "Dad, can I please have $10? And he said to me, "No, not until you can tell me how that $10 is going to make you 5 times what you're going to do with it. Firstly, where you're going to spend it. Money doesn't grow on trees." And at that point in time, I said, "Well, then I'm never going to ask you for $10 again," okay? Because he wouldn't give it to me. And at that point, that really did set me on a journey that said, well, if I have to ask somebody every time for $1, okay, somebody else is in control of my future. So I decided at that point, I got 3 jobs, I babysat 3 kids, I sold cards door to door, and I started on producing income for myself from the age of 9. And unfortunately, till the day my dad passed away, I never ever asked him for another dime. And I funded my education, I funded my cars, I paid rent to stay at home, so the natural course of a very difficult self-serving of independency. When I was 17, I started my first company, and I was involved in the taekwondo industry for South Africa, and I was selected as a Springbok to compete in the World Championships, and that was. I got involved in many years of training and saw a massive gap in the fact that we were under sanctions and we had no standards of equipment or clothing that could really allow us to be able to compete on the international stage. And that's when I decided, well, this is a problem. It really needs to be solved. Why can't we be equal? Okay, and it really set me on that journey around, well, how can I make a difference? What can I do to contribute to my current society? And so I built a martial arts manufacturing company was my start. I traded for nearly 20 years, after I'd exited that company. But that was a real learning. I slept in warehouses, I manufactured because I never had enough money to drive home. Lots of crazy journeys as an entrepreneur. But it definitely set me on my pace, because while I was running a company, I was still studying. I left school to study programming and then accounting, and I always found that as much as I'd love to be able to be a programmer, I just spoke too much, okay? And definitely think that numbers was my forte. And that developed in terms of really going from manufacturing into building a fast-moving consumable goods company, developing 4,000 lines of product into retail, to then building another company that was in pharmaceuticals, looking to solve spina bifida in children and nutraceutical ranges, to then really developing a tech company. Quite a range to go around when I wanted to really be in technology, but what a way to go. So my journey really over the last 30 years is I've built 5 multi-million-dollar companies from startup to financial and strategic exit. And each one of those have been a very key driver of solving problems. It didn't matter whether it was never just about the money. It was about how could I make a difference? What could I do to deliver change? And when you sit on a path as an entrepreneur, you've got to shift your views around what are you doing? How you want to achieve it, and where do you want to go with it? And why are you doing it? It's not what, it's the why, okay? And I think that I've always been driven by the why. And when you start something, and when I started, iVvy, I got involved in that industry by default. Okay, it wasn't something I chose. And I know you're going to ask me probably some other questions, but I hope that's a little bit around my background.
I'm going to bring it back to Taekwondo. Is that, that mindset, I guess, and the skills that you learnt there, is there any synergies with that in business? Has that helped you with the resilience?
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that there's something, any elite athlete, okay, in order to be good, you've got to do 10,000 hours. To be great, you have to do 100,000 hours, okay? When you apply yourself in any sport, okay, it's about discipline, it's about commitment, and it's about a will to never give up. If you want to be the best in your sport, you have to live by that. And I've taken that code as part of my, I attribute that to my business world. Mm-hmm. So if I want to be the best, I want to really be, in search of excellence, I apply that methodology. And let me tell you, many times I think that any founder, anybody working in a job, you go through really hard times. You go through times when you go, I can't do this anymore, I've had enough, I feel like it's just too much. And I tell you what Taekwondo taught me was that indomitable spirit and that will to never give up, okay? And you have to live it. It's tattooed on my back since I was 20. And I sometimes have to turn in the mirror and look at it, okay, to remind myself. But it also teaches you control. I think when you learn that as much as things around you can fall apart, it's how you react to situations that can make the difference, okay? You can either flare up and lose your shit, okay, some people really do, or you can really take control of the situation and really step out and look in when you make those. And Taekwondo has definitely added to that in my business career.
Okay. And so fast forward to 2009, so you co-founded or founded iVvy at that point. What problem were you trying to solve then with this company?
Well, it's very interesting because as much as iVvy, what you see is iVvy today, it actually started in South Africa. Through the digital tech company that I built, I was working in the corporate market. People would say creative strategy, product development, a natural extension is, oh, we've got this fantastic product, can you take it to market? And I'll go, well, how hard's an event? Can't be that hard, just great creative, find a good venue, get a great audience, okay, and make it memorable, okay? How hard is that? Well, that's when I discovered that there was a real problem in the industry, that it was so difficult for us to be able to find venues that were available on a specific date, find out how much they costed, all the supply chain that's involved in setting up an event, okay? There was nowhere that you could go online and say, I'm looking for a venue for 500 people on the 18th to the 20th of November with 3 breakout rooms, $100 a head, and I want it now, okay? There was nowhere. It was not just a local problem, it was a global problem. And so I set on a path. I took a couple of million out of all my cash. I bootstrapped the company for probably about 3.5 to nearly 4 million US equivalent, built some tech and commercialized it, built an MVP, took it to market. I had massive demand for large corporates like banking institutions, petroleum companies, medical insurance companies that went, oh my God, you have built the first meetings platform that could aggregate the data and granularly roll up all the spend of my procurement within my department and give visibility and automation that had never been seen in the events industry. But I built it in ASP. Now, I did that in 2006. And I was 10 years ahead of the curve. Now, if you look at cloud technology today, think back in 2006 when mobile phones still had an antenna, okay? They were the size of a shoe. So a long way thinking about progress. I built it. I had this massive demand that I'd built it for a couple of hundred people per organization. And the next thing, I had Nedbank and Old Mutual, Mutual Federal decide they wanted to roll out my system as the procurement system for all of their events and all their staff to 30,000 people. And I went, OMG, I am, right, okay. This was an issue I faced. And I went, I built it not thinking that it would be that big. And I now had run out of money. And I'd put everything into this, and I'm going, this is 15th of December, Christmas is coming, what am I going to do? Well, I went to the Industrial Development Council of South Africa. I put forward a bid for a grant for funding. And as you may know, at that time, we were under ANC rule, okay, which is really difficult to get money, doesn't matter, I was at the bottom of the food chain, okay. And but on the 29th of July, I was awarded 10 million from the South African government to re-engineer my tech because of the national benefits it could bring the country and actually put a ecosystem on a global playing field to drive live availability, rates and inventory of this whole supply chain. Now, anybody who's ever read anything about me will have seen that in the media. Within 2 days of me being notified of the award of this grant, I was awarded entry into Australia. So I had 10 million on the one side and I had Australia on the other side, okay? And unfortunately, when I was 23, my father was murdered in front of me. We were attacked at home and I lost him. And I was the victim of 3 murders and really some very horrific crimes within my family. And when it came to that decision, that was such a turning point for me because I had 2 young kids and I know that I could build a company anywhere, okay? What I didn't have, I decided to choose life over money. And I walked away. 2 weeks later, I was on an aeroplane into Australia with my 2 young kids, enough clothes in the suitcase, and I started a new life with no money, no job, no network, and I landed up in the Gold Coast. Okay, so you tell me, who makes that type of decision, okay?
And you struggled, didn't you, to get funding in Australia from the banks? They wouldn't...
Oh, there's no way. Banks don't fund tech because it's you can't hedge an asset value on it, okay? And it was... So I walked into Australia with my IP, or my source code, and I started again.
And so how did that funding journey start again? How did you, with no network... no backing from the bank. How did you go to raise money for the company then?
You know, the one thing you learn about when you're an entrepreneur is the will to never give up, okay? When you're at the bottom of the bucket, okay, the only way is up, okay? And you become the best door knocker and salesperson you've ever been when you know you've got to feed the kids, okay? Because that's how it came for me. I went to the Mantra Hotel Group and I put a PowerPoint up on what I'd built and I said to them, I'm going to build this technology that is going to change this industry, okay? This is what it's going to do. And I had a seating with their executive team, and they went to me and they go, Lauren, what you're building is a Ferrari, and we ride a bicycle, okay? And I said, you know what? I love fast cars. Join me for the ride. And I think they were so enamored by my desperation, to be completely honest, that they actually committed to a 48-page legal contract to become a strategic partner in me in developing my code for the best for industry. I still didn't have money, okay? And I still didn't have a partner at the time. And I decided that when I entered in Australia, that the learnings that I had in building my tech company is I wanted the best tech guys that I could bring together as an engineering team that could help me build something for global scale from the onset. And I met my co-founder, James, probably within 6 months of my arrival here, because I'd knocked on so many people's doors to see if I could consult my services that they wanted to get rid of me, okay, out the door, and they go down to that guy down the road, he can do what you want, okay. Well, I knocked on his door and I nearly broke it down, okay, because I refused to give up, and I said, you've got to return my call. 4 hours later, still hadn't returned my call, okay. Little did I realize that what I decided to do at that point was, he had a web tech company that was building websites and CRMs, and I thought, before I share my idea, I'm going to see whether he could do the job. So I went in behind the scenes and did due diligence on him for 6 months. And then I propositioned him to build it. And I said, you've got 24 hours, here's my source code, here's what I'm building, you've got 24 hours to tell me if you're going to be my partner. I then, within 24 hours, he came back and said, right, let's do it. I said, good, now I need money, okay? So I went and knocked on my door of a cousin that I'd never met, that I said, hey, I'm your long-lost cousin from South Africa, okay, and pitched my concept. He seeded my company, not knowing me, and I started the business in 2009, August. And since then, I've raised over 13 million. I have scaled and developed 2 enterprise applications in a marketplace, scaled it into 14 countries with operations in 6 countries. I'm about to complete my pre-IPO round to list on the stock market by the end of this year. That's my journey.
It's pretty impressive. I'm very glad he invested back then.
Oh, yeah. Got a meeting just now.
Yeah, a shareholder meeting. No, I read a quote from back in those days, back in 2014, from you that said, it always costs you 3 times what you think and takes you 5 times longer to deliver.
Oh, yes.
What's an example that comes to mind with that? Was it the building the tech, taking it to market?
You know what? It's interesting. Tech is difficult because it's never ending. And in order to innovate, you've constantly got to invest for innovation. You've got to be ahead of the curve. You can't just serve now, you've got to serve the future. And when my partner said to me, God, no, it'll take me 18 months to build it. I said, well, we're going to clock 18 years, okay, versus 18 months, okay. When you start, you've got to understand what the end result is, but it shifts. It's a constant moving pathway. And when you decide to partner in an industry, it's different. I feel like I'm on the horse with a machete, okay, because I'm pioneering change. It's not like I've had anybody walk the path ahead of me that I can just quickly plug in and go, oh, I'm just the most, least caustic solution on the market. No, I'm disrupting, I'm changing, I'm automating and systemizing an entire industry sector and taking it from a paper-based system to automation. It's digitization. So change is huge. So investment into building product always costs you a lot more. So when you're planning to build something, make it 3 times the value of what you think it is. And if you think it's going to be a year, plan for 3 years. Because it is always longer, it is always harder, it always costs you more money. You need more people, you need more operations, you need more support. There are so many things that you do not know at that point when you start your company, okay, of how long it's going to take you or how far you're going to get. But it's like it's like when you get married, you never plan for divorce. Okay, you never plan that there's disasters that could happen or there's stumbling blocks that you could prevent you from taking a step forward. But in building tech, you have to plan for so many things. And you have to think, particularly when you're scaling globally. Building a company is one thing, scaling it is a completely different ballgame. Okay, and it requires an enormous shift of strategy, of structures, of people, investments in team, and investments in security and development and language and culture and currencies, and it takes you into a completely different ballgame.
And I'm interested in this because you started on the Gold Coast. Well, you brought it from South Africa, but you started strong on the Gold Coast, and you're still here.
Love it.
So you didn't move in order to scale this company globally?
No. I always believed that it didn't matter where you were. The biggest things that are going to be your key factors is finding the right team. Okay, and if you can incentivize somebody to be part of your team because you offer something that is important to them, lifestyle. Gold Coast has incredible lifestyle. 2, you can still give them a remuneration that is absolutely fair and reasonable to market value. Okay, you will always have to, when you start your company, you can never possibly pay premium dollar because you're wanting to get up and get out the block, which means you have to incentivize your team through share options and giving them incentives to be part of it and to take a lower investment in terms of wages. But Gold Coast for me was a lifestyle choice for me. Having grown up in Chicago and Johannesburg, I knew I had a husband with 2 young boys that I wanted to be by the sea. I wanted to have a lifestyle. But let me tell you something, I live near the beach and I never see the beach, okay? So there's something wrong with that equation, okay? So I could be anywhere, okay? And but I have to tell you, I don't want to move my head office out of Gold Coast. I love Queensland. I think we have so much to offer businesses and startup cultures and to become this innovative tech hub, and not just tech hub, but a business hub, because there's a lot of amazing talent out there. You just have to find them and you have to bring them together and you have to culture that, and then you've got to be able to help grow it.
And was that a challenge, finding the talent? Because we work with a lot of startups here, and it's especially in that tech space, and it's something that does come up a lot, the talent pathway.
I think, excuse me, developers and engineers are really hard to find. They never put themselves out there, so you have to hunt them. Okay. Secondly, you are always competing with the premium wage out of Sydney or Melbourne, when particularly that it's a really hard space to recruit. So I opened up an office in India. Okay, I recruited a bunch of dev guys with my lead engineers and architects here that would then obviously manage that. Obviously, very hard to manage time zones, India, okay, versus here. But that's why we're opening a Philippines office now. But what we found was that we like to offer people residency here, okay? So if we find good talent, and whether they're in Israel or India or wherever, I'd rather bring them into Australia. We sponsor them in so that we can also foster the innovation and the culture of participation.
So it's a big strategy.
It's a big strategy. Talent. You can't, Gold Coast does not have enough, okay? That's why I'm very much in support of the visa of bringing in that talent and that tech talent. And same as with Michael Cannon-Brooks and Scott and Atlassian and all those guys, they also chase the same thing, where you have to have good talent. But if you don't have it, you have to have a way to bring it in, okay? And governments have to support that initiative, otherwise innovation dies, okay? And that's not where you want to be.
I want to go on to, International Women's Week. And this is something that we've kind of chatted about this week, and we promoted this event, and we were pretty, clear in our promotion that we didn't want to put the word female in front of founder every time we mentioned you. I'm interested to know how you feel about that, because there's a lot of female founders, momtrepreneur, that kind of stuff. How do you feel about that?
I hate that. Okay, and I tell you why, because I don't believe a man or woman is any different. I believe we have different skills, and I believe that we're all equal. And it's very difficult when you don't get enough women who are breaking these glass ceilings and are out there making their pathways, because as much as you need role models, you have to have people that smash it out the park. Otherwise, encouraging these young women to really go out there and become female leaders is difficult, because they've got nobody to look to say, well, you did it, okay? And maybe I'm just, and I say this with an open heart, I'm probably more male than I am female. I'm female on the outside, but I'm male on the inside. I have always been a tomboy since I was young. And for me, just because I had things in other places, okay, made me no different to the fact that I played with guns. I didn't have the doll, okay? I just was different. I was wired differently. And I think what's been hard along my journey is the fact that people look at you and they judge you, okay, as a female, to say, well, just because you're female, you can't do the job as well as I can, or you're not worthy of the funding, and let me tell you, the investment community in funding women leadership, and it's really hard, okay? There is, as much as there's got amazing male ambassadors, 2.5% of women are funded worldwide, okay? It is appalling, okay? It has to change, okay? And the only way we can do that is to prove that there are women that will make this happen. I will build $1 billion company and I will help change it for women because we need it. Yeah, that's my goal.
So it's a significant challenge that you've found in your journey. And I guess from your perspective, in those boardrooms, raising capital, what's the differences between men and women in that room? That
a woman's success is defined by a couple of things. You have to have confidence. You got to believe in yourself because nobody's going to believe in you if you don't. And if you can't show that firstly you're backable, you actually know what you're doing and you're going to execute what you say you're going to do, nobody else will back you, okay? And it comes down to that, having firstly that confidence, courage, okay? If you're not courageous, okay, in taking a challenge and taking that leap of faith, okay, you need so many things around you to be successful. You need community. You need the people around you to lean on, because there are going to be days you feel broken, okay? And you cannot show your vulnerabilities because you want to be seen as strong. You want to be seen that you can compete. You want to be seen that you are equal, okay? And sometimes that's not always possible, okay? But you also need, you need to have these investors that come in, that believe in you, that give you that confidence. Because when you're fighting and you're doing 150 no's every time, it breaks you down and it makes you weary, okay? And you have to believe that I don't care. I am going to knock every door down until I get what I believe I am worth and what this business needs, because this is backable, regardless of whether I'm male or female. And that confidence will come through in your meetings, how you present, how you pitch, how confident, the commercial models, the people that take the risk on you, okay? And what you've invested and what you're prepared to give up to do it. Because you have to do so much more, okay, than some, and it's an unconscious bias. I am in a tech industry and I've got a double barrel shotgun. I have tech and hospitality, the two most dominant sectors, male dominated, okay. But you know what, for me, I love a challenge, okay. I go, bring it on, because I'm going to show you. Okay, and I have no fear. So let me show you how to do it, because maybe you just don't know how yourself. Okay, so that's, for me, the way that I wake up every morning believing that I'm going to change the world, and I'm going to do it until I'm 1 foot in the grave. Because if I don't believe that, how do I get my team to follow me? How do I get to my customers to believe in me? How do I get my investors to back me? Because if I don't lead by that belief, I can't make that ripple of that belief out within everybody that I touch.
I love that. So we have, we've got some pretty impressive entrepreneurs in the room that happen to be women.
Great.
So I guess my question is, Cohort, our whole purpose is that we exist to support founders, and especially on the Gold Coast. So what can we do? You mentioned community a little bit earlier. What can we do to support women founders?
I think the one thing that people don't realize, it's a lonely journey. Being at the top and being the founder and being the person that is creating it and striving for success, many a times you feel very, very alone because there's so few people that you feel like that you may know in your network that's going through the same thing as you, okay? I think what's amazing for cohorts is to bring together founders that are going through different things but at the same pace as others, where I've done this, or I've gone through this, I've built my MVP, or I've launched this product, or I've created this idea, but I don't know how to do this, and to not feel that they are inferior or they're lacking something. That support is really, really critical for young women who have got these ideas and need some guidance, okay? Mentoring programs, I think as much as you've got to, the people who mentor have got to have had that experience as well, that can bring some of that, whether it's commercial, somebody needs to know, well, how do I take my product to market? Or bring in somebody who's done it and in that space, because that can help somebody. The speed to market and conversion of success happens based on what you have around you and what's brought together to help you deliver that success, okay? And cohorts like you have the ability to bring some of those amazing, from education to commercialization to strategy to biotech to, do you know, you can bring some of that amazing talent that can just share their journey and say, hey, well, if I've got something I want to do, can I just get to you to have a 1 hour session that might be able to just help me speed my journey up to success? Or not necessarily even make me realize that maybe this isn't going to work because I haven't thought of X, Y, or Z, because you don't know who your competitors are, or you don't know what's the pricing strategy, or do you know, is it actually going to work? And have you done clinical studies or trials? Or do you know whether it's healthcare or whether it doesn't matter what it is. But going through that and connecting those people and having a network of support is actually critical to success.
It's interesting you say that. My colleague Drang mentioned earlier that we started the first cohort of the Founders Club this year. So it was 15 founders on the Gold Coast. Every month they'd come, talk about a topic, and it was all centred around that peer sharing. And it's by far our most successful program that we've run here.
Yeah.
So we're looking at doing a couple more iterations of that. So an earlier stage one, a later stage one, and keeping that going, because that is the general feedback, that peer sharing and connecting founders is one of the best things that you can do.
Yeah. I'm actually part of a group called the Summit Club, and it's come out of Innovation Bay, and I was one of their founding members. I tell you what's quite interesting with some of these groups is when you're connected at a different time of your size, like you've got to be valued at X, Y, Z, and you're part of a scale-up side, or you're part of a startup or a seed, you're going through the same sort of journey. You also have different networks, like i.e. I need open, please can you introduce me to the guys that backed you, or do you have an investor for me that I can pitch this concept because you know what they invest in? But what's also really good is having like retreats where the innovators come together and the founders come together and they actually have time to share. The hardest thing is when you're limited with an hour or two, it's sometimes not enough. And you've got to let down your walls as well, because everybody's trying to be something and be successful. You've got to learn to let go of some of the things to be vulnerable when you least want to really be. And that's probably when you grow the most.
So I couldn't guess do this interview in these times without bringing up COVID and bringing up last year for you. How challenging was that? Sorry, being in the hospitality or tech, but being in the hospitality industry.
Oh, it was massive for me. I had just been on a massive capital raising run across the US. I decided to raise capital out of the venture world because there's only 5 in Australia that would really even, let alone look at us, okay? It's unfortunately shocking in terms of the volume of funds here versus the volume of funds in America. Anyway, I had just got off, I had 40 investors at the table to run my 10 million round, and COVID hit. And I got off the aeroplane and I went, OMG, all this chaos and panic was happening with all our customers. I moved my entire global team home within 24 hours. Okay, in every operation I had them working and functioning. I knew that everything was coming. I was so reactive. I thought, I'm going to plan it, we're going to deliver it, and this is how we're going to do it. I reduced teams based on the markets in terms of not losing any team members. I got everybody proportionately working together as a team on reduced hours, so nobody felt left out. Okay, this was a thing that I was going to do globally. At the same time, with our customers, which were all the hotels and restaurants and casinos and stadiums, everybody was shut down. Okay, they furloughed their teams, they cut their staff by 70%. All our tech, which would have been useful for them in terms of they needed events and groups, stuff to be taking place. We decided to partner with them, give them payment plans, so it reduced their cash flow impacts, help them get through this period, same as JobKeeper did for supporting people that were heavily impacted, same with us. We managed to be able to get support from US, UK, really supporting our teams. But what was interesting for me, as much as we also lost some of our smaller customers, which were like the little restaurants because they didn't have the balance sheet to support it and some of them still haven't opened, we signed over 200 new customers right through a global pandemic. And that was in the millions, okay, of sales and revenue with a reduced team, with going through crisis management and restructuring. And what it showed me was that the tech we've built was so good that people were caught in the industry with their pants down because they were unprepared. Everything was manual. They got less infrastructure. Now they need a system to what they did with 5 people, they could do with 1. Okay, and we've seen this huge slingshot come back as the industry is now picking up. And I expect this to be a really massive growth year for us, coming off the back of a crisis year. And but let me tell you something, it has been the hardest navigation of my career, okay? And I have gone through a lot, okay, to really build and keep people and be sustainable across my different companies.
And so as a leader, I guess you talked about kind of leading from the front and having that confidence. How did you keep that confidence?
Thanks to a great husband. Okay, and my young kids, because let me tell you, many a times you have to be strong for others. As much as you feel weak and as much as you feel like you can't do some of these things, you have to be there for other people because it's not about you, it's about them. And as a leader, you have to reflect calm. You've got to reflect the fact that you understand that this is going to be hard and you need to communicate and you need to keep everybody informed along the way as to how we're doing things, keeping their mental checks in, making sure that they are supported. And when you go home, you fall into a bag of beans and you cry on your husband's shoulder, okay? But the reality is my husband's been my rock, okay, because he's my common sense, and he's been such a pillar of strength for me, enabling me to do what I want to do, and he's been my real confidence booster because they know you inside out, and it's really hard sometimes because at the end of the day, you also don't want to be weak for your children either because you want to be there as strong. You know things are happening, but you've got to manage through a crisis. But we all have moments when the times feel dark and it feels impossible to get out of. And then each day passes and you feel like you're getting to the next step, and then you're getting to the next step, and then you're getting to the next, and then there's light. And you've got to focus on the end result and not focus on what you're going through now, because sometimes it takes an enormous amount of courage, okay, and faith in yourself to get through these hard times, and you need people that help you through it. And don't just think for 1 minute, just because, yes, you have to be strong, you've got to lead from the front. Don't think that showing vulnerability is also a bad thing. It's actually a strength. Yeah.
And so what happened to your $10 million round? Did you close it?
No.
You didn't?
No, because everything stopped. There was so much chaos, so much uncertainty, and I had to restart again.
So you're going back again?
Yeah, that's my round now.
Well, that
and
was my
pray
next,
to God.
That was my next
I
question, and my final question, really. But what's next?
You know, it's quite interesting. I said that this will be my last company I build. Okay, that I build. My view is I really would love to, and this is my plan, is complete my pre-IPO round now, which I'm hoping I'll finish by March, end of the month, and list the company. You know, I do want to get it to 100 million in revenue within the next 4 years and be that $1 billion market cap company. You know, and that is my goal, and that's what I'm working towards. Following that, it's more about how can I add value to others. I've built 5 different companies in different sectors that have been and will be multi-million and potentially $1 billion company, which I've always said from the beginning, and people think I'm crazy. Okay, but like I said, don't believe the naysayers. Okay, it's just believe in yourself. You will do it. And my goal then is to really go in and open my own fund for women. I want to go in and I'll take what I exit out of the company and I will go and start it, and I will back as many women that I can possibly do to help them deliver their dreams and build and deliver their successes, because the ripple effect of that is just so enormous.
From the Gold Coast?
From the Gold Coast.
All from the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast. Queensland.
Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. I'm going to leave it at that. But, you know, it's been so wonderful just to hear about your journey and those entrepreneurial insights. And, you know, I've gotten so much out of this, and I know everyone in the audience, including, you know, so many entrepreneurs that are here. If there's anything else you'd like to add, but...
Firstly, thank you for having me. You know, I think that, you know, any opportunity to share one's journey, as good, as bad as it is, it's a learning, okay? And if I can at least impart little takeaways that when you walk away today, that it says that it takes a couple of really important things. Believe in yourself. Dream big. Don't dream small, okay? Because you really, really, really can do it. You just need a couple of things to go your way, okay? And never, ever give up. And if you can take that away with you today, that's something that hopefully will help encourage you on your journeys. So I appreciate being here and being able to share mine.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Please, we're going to stick around for a little while. We've got some drinks. We've got such a, you know, wonderful community of people here. Please stay and network. And I know Lauren's going to be here for a little while as well. So take this opportunity to pull her aside and ask some questions. Please keep in the loop with future Startup Grind events. This one we are going to pop up online. So feel free to share it around, and we'll announce our next Fireside chat, which will be in a couple of months, in a couple of weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Ariana.